This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the AIAA New England webinar tonight. The Next Aeronautics Revolution by Vannessa Aubuchon. Vannessa has conducted research, guided development activities, and managed various aspects of projects and programs at NASA for over 18 years. She has been unfettered rigor for learning and development, solving problems, and improving processes. Vannessa's career has been filled with experiences spanning space exploration to aviation in multiple NASA organizations, including headquarters in positions of researcher, project managers, systems engineer, and branch head. She currently manages the Revolutionary Aviation Mobility sub-project in the Transformational Tools and Technologies projects. Vannessa holds a bachelor's degree from Mississippi State University and master's degree from Virginia Tech. She is currently pursuing a PhD in engineering management from Old Dominion University. She has been the recipient of the NASA Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate Associate Administrators Award for Leadership and Management Excellence, AIAA Hampton Roads Section Michelle Young Engineer of the Year Award, an Orion Exceptional Contribution Award, and multiple NASA Group Awards. She serves as AIAA Hampton Roads Section Council Member, AIAA Region 1 Deputy Director for Technical and Career and Professional Development, among other roles and boards committees. Vannessa is also a mother of two young boys and enjoys volunteering at local STEM events and with BSA Troop 28. Without further ado, I pass the stage on to Vannessa.
Thank you. Okay, so you can hear me and you can see the charts. Just confirm before I get going. I guess so. We'll say yes. So those, okay, thank you. So those two boys he mentioned that I have are in the next rooms over. So if they interrupt me at some point, I apologize now. I warned them to stay out of here. All right, so we'll get started. I think I see my boss's name at the bottom here, so now I have to be careful what I say, I think. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the next aeronautics revolution. Okay, so this is what the talk outline looks like. I'm going to talk about the third wave of aeronautics. What is that? And advanced air mobility. I'll describe what that is, what the enabling technologies are for that vision, and the current state of the industry, the challenges and barriers that we're facing now, and I'll talk briefly about some of the government investment in this area. Okay, so the third wave of aeronautics, the first, there's the first 50, second 50, next 50 is kind of how you can group it. So the first 50 years or so of aviation, Wright brothers were, as you can imagine, disruptive technologies that required constant adaptation. So they were trying to figure out how to make everything work and changing lots of things on the aircraft until they arrived at a kind of the standard traditional tube and wing type configuration. So then came the second 50, where there were kind of more stable evolutionary optimizations, where they were trying to bring down the cost of flying so that more people could do it and the market expanded. Next 50 is kind of where we're at now. We're right in the middle of this. There's a big transformation happening. It's very much an emergent system that we're targeting that has a lot of adjectives that are used to describe it, a lot of qualities that they're targeting. Robust, scalable, adaptive, secure, safe, affordable, convenient, efficient, and environmentally friendly. So that's a lot of things to optimize for. But that's where we're at, and we are able to achieve many of those things now. This is based on some of the other recent revolutions in the on-demand market, like Uber or Lyft or DoorDash, where you can on your phone order something and it comes to the house. So it's kind of that idea is driving some of the market now. We're working towards bringing aviation into people's daily lives. And of course, this does require significant technology advancement. So I'll talk about all of those things. Another way to look at this, to see a little more detail about those three waves is on this chart. At the bottom, you can see, the industrial revolutions and how the aviation, we call them revolutions, kind of, followed those, at least the latter three of the industrial revolutions, to where now, we're converging many different industries and disciplines and even cultures. And as we probably all are aware, because we try to keep up with this in our day-to-day job, there's an increasing frequency of those technical breakthroughs. And everything's become more collaborative, more distributed, connected, that type of thing. And again, up in that top right box, you see a whole bunch of adjectives or qualities of the system that we're targeting. So pretty complex system, but enabled by a lot of the technologies that we have today, or ones that we think we're pretty close to getting to. Okay, so in this, third revolution in aviation, there are kind of four areas that that NASA focuses on anyway, and I kind of think it does encompass what's going on in aviation today. The first one of those is ultra efficient transport, where we're starting to look a little beyond the standard tube and wing configuration to concepts that might give us some more efficiency. There's also high-speed commercial flight. NASA has the new X-plane, that X-59, where they're going to try to demonstrate that they can lower the annoyance level of a supersonic boom as they're flying over land, to try to enable that market again. And then there's the future, well, I'll come back to future airspace in a minute. Advanced air mobility is the one I'm going to focus on for this talk, so you'll hear a lot about that. But then the future airspace kind of has to handle all these different new things, the new ultra efficient transports that may need slightly different operating conditions than current ones, high speed flight, and then the AAM vehicles I'm going to talk about that are mostly electric vertical takeoff and landing. And so increased density, increased complexity in operations. So there's a lot of research that is going into how do we manage the airspace with these new kind of emerging markets. Okay, so advanced air mobility, okay, there's the video that's gonna play. I'm gonna talk over it. Oh, let me turn off the noise. Okay, so I start with this video so you can get an idea of like the types of aircraft, the types of operations that we're talking about when we say AAM or advanced air mobility. In this case here, you see like an air taxi type configuration. Now there's a kind of more of a medium range cargo aircraft, a small UAS package delivery concept. Here's a vertiport. So you can kind of start to see the vision where we're in urban areas, higher density of operations, kind of a lot of things moving around in the airspace. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so AAM, NASA describes that, again, with the adjectives, safe, sustainable, affordable, and accessible aviation for transformational, local, and intra-regional missions. So what that means is we're talking about missions that are local, so within 75 nautical miles or so, and or intra-regional, so maybe from like a city to another city nearby, so, 300 nautical mile kind of range. So it can be rural or urban. Some of the concepts you saw in that video, the cargo transport, passenger carrying, any kind of small UAS, aerial work or package delivery. This can be electric vertical takeoff and landing, the small UAS. It can be electric conventional takeoff and landing, especially for, in that case, kind of the regional air mobility when you're going from maybe, city to city or town to town. You might hear me say, or maybe others, about UAM. That's kind of how this whole AAM movement started, with urban air mobility. So in that case, we're talking about just focused on an urban area over, a city, which is a particularly challenging use case because the density of operations is higher, or envisioned to be higher in that case. And of course, you have a lot more obstacles and different kinds of weather with wind things going on. You have a lot going on in an urban setting that you may not have, if you're flying more over a rural area. There's a lot more risk also. AAM is largely enabled by electrification and automation. I'll talk more about that later. We're not talking about like supersonic or hypersonic transport, or the existing like hub and spoke aircraft that you take across the country or whatever. So why is this happening now? There are some drivers for change, they call it. The big one that started a lot of this was increasing commute times. You can see in the chart on the right there that, for different population groups over the years, the amount of time spent commuting just keeps growing more and more as we get more congested. And people want to try to resolve that. How can there's got to be another way, right, than sitting in your car on the interstate. So flight, might be the answer. There have also been advances in technology that make us think that this is possible now. There are, cloud networks, mobile devices that can support fleet management. The on-demand service technology I talked about with, ordering your Uber or your DoorDash. And also there's just greater public acceptance of aircraft integrity, versus, I don't know, 7,500 years ago, people were maybe not quite as trusting. And now most people will probably get on an airplane and fly somewhere now and feel like they'll be safe. So there are different applications. I've touched on some of these already. The cargo transport, what they call consumer enterprise goods and services, which is just another way to say package delivery. So, if you, it could be anything from medical packages, like they're kind of piloting now in some areas, or your coffee, as I'll show you in a few slides. Public good missions are a big focus. We think that that's a good place to start, and especially to show kind of what the impact could be of these technologies. So in this case, there's a air ambulance. So maybe, there's a hospital in the suburbs, or not a hospital, there's a an injured or sick person maybe in the suburbs of the city, and they don't have that great medical care there, not what they need, so they need to transport them as quickly as possible into maybe a more urban area where they have more capabilities. And then passenger transport. this is just air taxi. Like, I don't want to sit in traffic all day, so I'm gonna, just take this air taxi from the middle of the city to the suburb where my car is parked and go home. And on the public good, I forgot to mention another big focus that NASA has right now is wildfire fighting. That there's a new project starting around that where we are trying to help with the wildfires out, in the western part of the United States with automated vehicles like this. So this, it's kind of like an OV1 that shows you all the different types of missions that can be happening at the same time. And this is where, I talked about the complexity of managing the airspace. You can kind of see it better here when you imagine, all these flights happening at the same time in the same area and at a high tempo and possibly even more than you see on here. But, you've got the cargo delivery, the intercity transportation, the on-demand air taxi, the air ambulance, all of those things kind of be the vision. This is the vision. They'll all be operating simultaneously. So we talked about that commute time. So in this example, this is Washington, D.C., so probably not too far from where many of you are. And that kind of red orangish blob in the middle is about how far people can get in their cars in 60 minutes. Over, they weighted it over a 24-hour period and all that, but on average they can get about that far. So if you kind of drew a circle around the outermost condition there, which is about a 40-mile radius, if you took an air taxi, it would take you about half the time, 30 minutes instead of 60. And if you kind of flip that and you say, well, how far could I get in 60 minutes? You can see you can get much farther in that hour than, in an air taxi than you could in a car. So this is appealing to many people. So market projections. I find this pretty interesting because I, at first, would not have thought that the market would be quite this big, but on average, the market studies that I've looked at show that the, potential market value is about $115 billion in the next, 10 years or so. Just for comparison's sake, the traditional conventional, hub and spoke aircraft we use in the US is about 150 or 60, I think, $billion. So this is talking about something that rivals that industry, which is pretty incredible to me. And of course, there are a few estimates that are different. You have to be kind of careful. Some of these estimates come from companies themselves, and some come from consulting groups and things like that. So you're probably wondering, well, how much will it cost? Like how much will it cost to go 40 miles out in the 30 minutes, like on that Washington, D.C. example? And so there's this chart here where Booz Allen Hamilton did a market study looking at different modes of transportation. And on the right side, you'll see things that look familiar, like owning a vehicle or taxi, ride sharing, which is like your Uber or your Lyft, and a limo and a helicopter. On the left side are the eVTOL concepts. And these are just projections of how much they could cost, and they're based on how many seats are on the aircraft. So the different concepts have different numbers of seats. Some have 2, some have, I think, up to 5 or 6. And of course, the less people on the aircraft, the more you're going to pay. But if you shared it with 4 other people, let's say, and you're on a 5-seater, it's projected to be about $6.25 a mile. So I looked at Boston. And you could fly from, it's about 13 miles straight line from Boston to the suburb I found on the map called Wellesley. And it would be about $81 to make that flight using the $6.25. And I quickly looked up an Uber ride at like 2:30 today for that same distance. And it varied what kind of, Uber you were going to get. It was anywhere from $45 to $71. So it kind of gives you an idea of like who might, maybe perhaps I'm not sure I would pay $81, certainly not every day, but I could see doing it sometimes, and I could definitely see a market for like corporate entities or other people who can just, afford to do this because time is money for a lot of people. For the package delivery, the estimate is about $4.20 per delivery. So to have a drone bring you coffee from your local coffee shop, you'll pay for the coffee plus about $4 for that service. So what are the enabling technologies? These are the three things that I think are the most major technologies that need a little more work to enable all of this at the scale, like the vision that I'm showing you. The first is electric propulsion systems. They're targeting electric because of reduced maintenance cost, the fact that it has zero carbon emissions, reduced fuel cost, and it's quieter. Noise is actually a big concern because most people, including me, don't want helicopter sounding thing flying over my house all day long. And electric propulsion systems tend to be quieter. There's a lot of other research going into noise as well, on the propeller shapes and configurations to reduce that noise impact. The second thing is autonomous systems. So this also enables a lower operating cost. The end goal for many concepts is to remove the pilot from the loop. And in many cases, I'm talking about no pilot on the vehicle. And also the ground operator wouldn't have, direct control over the vehicle. They might just be able to give it commands like go here or there. So of course that helps us deal with two things. One, the pilot shortage right now. And number two, not having to pay the pilots because they can likely pay, less people on the ground to operate, more of these vehicles if they are very safe on their own. And the last thing is scalable airspace, or traffic management for unmanned systems. And really, it's not just unmanned systems; it's heterogeneous. So it's manned aircraft and unmanned aircraft, and all the different concepts working together, scaling up to like tens of thousands of operations in an urban setting, which is a lot. So you can imagine you can't handle that with your traditional air traffic controller anymore. It has to be some kind of automated framework where everyone coordinates with each other using certain rules and things like that. So eVTOLs, it's eVTOL stands for electric vertical takeoff and landing. It means they hover and they take off and land vertically, but they fly or cruise horizontally. Generally, they use some kind of distributed electric propulsion system to turn smaller rotors, like many of the concepts you see on the right. But as you see, one size does not fit all. The different concepts take advantage of different characteristics and benefits depending on what the mission is that they're optimizing for. And the concepts on the right are just reference vehicles that one of the projects that NASA came up with so that we could do research on these concepts without being partial to one company over another. But they do represent pair 6 you'll see of the different types of vehicles in production. So their characteristics and capabilities. So this is just me kind of looking at specs of different concepts out there. So take some of these numbers with a grain of salt, but in general, these are about right. They fly about 100 to 200 miles an hour in general. Range varies quite a bit depending on which vehicle we're talking about. It can be 25 miles, it can be 300 miles. Some of the cargo configurations can go even farther. Generally, these UAM air taxi type vehicles weigh 3,000 to 4,000 pounds. They're about the size of a car, like the picture you see here, or up to maybe like a GA aircraft type size. They can carry 2 to 6 people, or 100 to 500 pounds of cargo. They cruise anywhere from 500 to 5,000 feet, and they are very quiet. Have 45 decibels. It probably doesn't mean a lot to most of you, but one company I looked at described that as the sound of your refrigerator in your house, which I don't know about you guys, but I don't even notice the sound of my refrigerator anymore. So pretty quiet and not annoying, as they say. So where are we with the industry? So here I have a couple of slides that show you what the different configurations look like, and you can see kind of how sometimes wildly they differ from each other. The ones shown here are domestic eVTOL air taxi manufacturers. I pulled these, I don't know, 10 months ago, 5 months ago, I don't know. And even since then, I already know that some of these concepts have changed a little bit already. Some of these companies are, bought by other companies, or all different kinds of things. But there are some big players on here that are, currently flying. Some of these are just conceptual at this point, but a wide variety of configurations. And foreign, there are several foreign countries from all over the world that are developing these concepts, from Israel to France, Tokyo, Brazil, China, Germany, all over. And so one thing I find interesting is what the inside looks like. So when I'm, imagining myself hitching a ride in one of these, or hiring a ride, I wonder, what's it going to be like inside? And it is going to be different than what you would expect, just, maybe climbing into a GA aircraft. These pictures are from EHang's vehicle, and you notice, it kind of looks like you're climbing in a car. The way the seats are and everything, it's nice. What is even more interesting is the control panel. It looks like a set of 2 tablets, right? There's no, in probably all of these configurations, I believe, there's no stick and rudder type. There's a lot of automation involved. Well, initially I shouldn't say that. Initially, many of these concepts do still have stick and rudder control. The goal is to, as quickly as they can, not have that, to where the vehicles are highly automated, and there may be a pilot on board that can push, some buttons to route around something or deal with something, whatever functions they feel like the pilot or operator still needs to have control over. And of course, the long-term goal is to have no pilot on board. There are some cargo configurations out there that are in development. And what I called autonomy enablers, these are companies who are developing the software, but not necessarily the vehicle to go with it. And so there are 3 in the US here that these are 3 that I am most familiar with. But yeah, so, Reliable Robotics right now is working with just a standard Cessna, making it autonomous, and both X-Wing and Near Earth Autonomy are also partnering on different aircraft concepts, but their primary goal is the software. And vertiports, this is another interesting, oh, hang on, okay. Part, or, piece of the puzzle here. These vehicles have to have a place to land. In the very urban setting, you saw the video where they were landing on top of a building, kind of like a helipad. But these are some configurations that are for the suburb areas, where they kind of look like a really cool mini airport, I guess. You park on one side and the aircraft are on the other side. These are real concepts in these pictures. There is a community in Florida, I think, that is working with Lilium on designing one of these for their community. So people are putting a lot of thought into this, and it's becoming a reality. Oh, hang on. I'm trying to change slides. Hang on. Okay. As far as small package delivery drones, these are some of the concepts. Now, some of these are operating. A lot of them, there's more operations happening in some other countries around the world, but the US is coming along. So you'll recognize some of these, Amazon Air. I think we've heard about that in the news a lot. And if you follow this at all, you'll hear about Flirty and Zipline and perhaps Matternet. But they're all working towards delivering various types of packages with, again, varying concepts. So, sorry. So I talked about drone deliveries around the world. In the US, we're a little behind in allowing these widespread, drone deliveries. So there are companies operating in other countries where they're allowed to do this now. The example that's playing in the video here is Wing in Australia. And interestingly, the coffee is the #1 thing that they deliver to people. But they've completed hundreds of thousands of flights at this point. Amazon was working in the UK. Zipline works in Rwanda, and I think now maybe another country in Africa. There's New Zealand, Germany, all over different places of the world where these companies are starting their first operations with very few incidences as well. In the US, well, the first multi-UAS operations ever approved in the US were those Intel light shows. Those are tiny little drones that coordinate with each other. And then there's the FAA's Beyond program. So this is what a lot of these companies in the US are working through, this Beyond program, working with the FAA to do initial operations and collect data and try to build that safety case and show that, yes, this really is safe. And with their end goal being, it's not just a drone operator flying, a drone, kind of like you might do with your hobby drone at home. These are autonomous vehicles where the goal is to have, maybe one person or maybe a couple of people kind of in a ground control station in a room where they can't see the aircraft, like they don't have line of sight to it. where they're kind of managing many of these vehicles delivering things across a community. So to get to that, they have to, kind of step along and prove that they can do this safely. Okay, we'll talk about new operating paradigms. So I talked throughout the presentation about, the goal of reducing or removing the pilot and thus training requirements as well. Thereby, either, if you reduce the training requirements, you can increase the pilot pool. You can also automate the vehicle enough to where the pilot doesn't have to do as much, or eventually remove them, so you don't need the pilot at all. But doing these things allows you to increase the scale of the system, and it lowers the operating costs, and eventually the thought is that it improves safety. So the new operating paradigms are basically shifting that human role from providing decisions about everything to just providing intent. So instead of saying, fly, I don't know, left or fly right, whatever, or fly this heading, they're just providing intent, like, okay, go deliver this package to this address, and the aircraft takes care of everything along its path. If it encounters another aircraft that comes across, it reroutes itself. It does everything on its own. So there are different kind of paradigms here. There's simplified vehicle operations, where the goal is to simplify the pilot's role to where it's just higher level decision making across the flight. Then there's what we call multi-vehicle or M2N operations, where kind of like I described on the previous slide, where you have a small number of operators on the ground that are managing a fleet of aircraft that are operating simultaneously. And then there's, of course, fully autonomous, where humans provide intent only. The aircraft and its associated systems perform all the flight functions, including handling any contingencies that it encounters. So some of the challenges, there are a lot of challenges and barriers. I just made a word cloud here. You can kind of look through and pick out, the different things. You probably thought of many of these as I was talking. Social acceptance is really big in this word cloud, and that's a big one that companies and different organizations trying to enable this future talk about and try to figure out, how are we going to get communities to accept these types of operations and hopefully see how it improves their lives. Scalability, all the complexity of, automating the vehicle further and having multiple companies and types of aircraft operating in the same airspace. And there's a lot of problems as you scale the system up. It becomes very, very complex. It's very challenging. Regulation is another one. We do not know how to regulate, I guess, autonomous aircraft in the US. Everything right now is done with waivers, kind of taking, baby steps. So there's kind of an overhaul that needs to be done there to accommodate those, so that process is smoother for everyone. So I'm going to wrap up here, talk a little bit about government investment. So I work at NASA. So of course we work in this area on the aviation side of NASA. We have an advanced air mobility mission with several projects contributing to that. Of course, the FAA is involved, trying to figure out what's the safest way to regulate all of this. And then the Air Force. many people don't know that the Air Force has an Agility Prime program where they are working with some of the companies developing those concepts to leverage some of the technologies, but also to, kind of jumpstart that market. So NASA has roles, I guess you could say, in addressing like many those challenges that were in that word cloud earlier. We're trying to address a lot of those in different places, and so we've kind of divided working groups we do with the community into like the vehicle development and operations, and then the airspace design, and then the community integration. So we talk with everyone, in the community about how to specific issues and those kind of categories. So we do have a pretty healthy R&D portfolio in this area. We have what they call a national campaign series where they do flight testing with some partners, and of course the robust partnerships. So in closing, these are the key messages I want to pass along. So we're living through this third great revolution right now. I think it's super exciting. This advanced air mobility market is a key motivator that is, pushing forward some new technologies that, with the goal of making our lives better. There's a lot of investment in AAM. It has a large projected economic value. And kind of the last thing is, our daily lives will be impacted by these technologies within our lifetime, and in some cases, as I make the point with the last bullet there, by drone probably very soon. Sooner than later, I think, we'll have our coffee or Tylenol or Chipotle or whatever you order delivered right, to your driveway. Probably in some cases within a couple of years. So I'm going to leave you with this cool video that NASA made. Just give me a second to get it set up, and then I'll take questions. Let's see. I'm going to turn.
At NASA, we're developing ways to safely accommodate the increasing traffic with diverse missions and complexity of our skies to make them more convenient than roads are today. Imagine aviation operations that can benefit everyone. Imagine choosing where you live or where to build your business without worrying about transportation limitations. Imagine a safe and affordable transportation system that embraces emerging trends in data science and intelligent autonomous systems. A world where aircraft are eco-friendly and where land can be used for green space instead of highways. Imagine a transportation system that will create new job opportunities and connect our communities to more resources. Imagine if your 1 week vacation really meant 1 week at your destination without days spent traveling, or if that destination was somewhere you thought you'd never go. At NASA, we imagine a future where communities are more connected, ideas flow more freely, and inspiration comes from everyone and everywhere. Sky for All means millions of airborne operations every day with a variety of aircraft. It means keeping our skies safe, affordable, and efficient. We're developing concepts and technologies today to ensure that aviation systems are ready for the vehicles, users, and businesses of tomorrow. NASA, imagining what the future holds.
Okay, can you hear me, Lindo?
Yeah. I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the PowerPoint, but it was the end anyway, so I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Thank you, Vannessa. So for the questions, if you could type it in or raise your hand virtually, so it should be on the bottom menu of the Zoom sections. And I'll either read out your questions or enable you to speak. So while I think people are pondering, I may start with my first question.
Okay.
It's very exciting. I read about some of the eVTOL companies launching air taxi services operation early as 2023, 2024. But that made me think about all this rigorous aircraft certification process that we know of. Could you share your thoughts on that? How realistic are they and what they're facing?
Yeah, but I think my answer is probably going to be kind of a political a little bit. So those schedules I think are aggressive based on what I know. And you do see companies that are saying, well, we made it through, this step, the certification process, or this step. But when you read the article and you see like what it is they're actually doing, it's not what it seems when you read the line. Like they may be flying just like a GA type aircraft doing air taxi services. And that's, maybe what they got approval for. So, but with that said, they are making progress. Some, so like I said, some companies faster than others. And the FAA is working with them to make this work. But of course, from their point of view, they want it to be very safe. So there's that hurdle. Will we be seeing just regular public like us flying around in some of those concepts I showed you next year? I don't think so. Not, at least not in the US. Maybe, a company like eHang or something. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong because I think this is exciting and I want it, to work. And I know that the business case relies on them achieving these milestones sooner than later. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Let's see if there's any questions. Okay, so David Klein says, thank you for the presentation. Okay, Adam Khan has a question. So thank you for hosting the informative presentation. What's one mission product you would personally love to see in action before anything else as a consumer? Tell us why.
Okay, I think he's talking about the different missions or use cases that I showed. Well, I mean, I'm really excited just for the package delivery thing. Like, I think, I can't imagine how cool it would be to just have, my food or whatever just delivered with the drone right in my driveway, probably faster too. But when we get up into like the bigger scale vehicles, I don't know if I'm quite ready to step into an air taxi with no pilot on board. So for me, what I think should happen first and what would, as I work in this field to try to enable it too, what would make me happiest is seeing some of the public good missions enabled first. Like if we could use, those highly automated vehicles to help fight the forest fires in California, that would be huge for me personally. And I think a big step towards also proving safety so that I will, be willing to get on one of those and fly around, Boston or wherever. That's just my personal opinion though.
So we started to get a couple more questions. So Norman, I'll put you on the speaker if you want to.
Okay. Hey, Norman.
I think you're still muted on your side. Seems like he's having a problem. Okay, so we'll move on to the next person. So Tom Rooks, I'll put you on the spot.
Okay. Are they able to unmute themselves? Maybe is there a setting?
I think so. Unmute buttons on the bottom left screen. All right, send the prompt. Okay. All right, seems like they're not being able to speak. So I go through the questions posted on the text. So this is from Derek Tweedy. Great presentation. Are you Star Trek or Star Wars? What kind of university student realistically expect in 4 to 5 years out?
Okay, so I don't want to make any enemies or anything. I like Star Trek and Star Wars, but if I had to choose one, probably Star Trek for me. Okay, but to the more serious part of your question, a university student. I assume, Derek, that you mean kind of prospects for a job or something that you might have 4 to 5 years from now. And this area in aviation is obviously growing rapidly, and especially certain disciplines, like if you focus on certain things, those people with the skills are being snapped up really quickly. Like I mentioned autonomy a lot, so anything along those lines, all the kind of AI, machine learning stuff, data analytics, like all of those things are going to be just probably a really good career field to have. But I think 4 to 5 years out, some of these companies should be starting to make money, initial operations, at least that's the goal. So I don't know, Derek, if I answered to your satisfaction, or you can come off mute and kind of tell me if I missed anything. And I'm going to let you, I can see the questions, but I'll let you pick through them.
So let's go down the list. So I think this is anonymous attendee. So this person has 3 questions. So first one, with the intent to reduce and remove pilot requirements, if we get to fully autonomous, who will monitor the system for errors that individual craft cannot overcome? Pilots, IT software engineers, or someone else? And the second question is, all the automation will require significant software, or crucial does cybersecurity become to the overall airworthiness determination?
Yeah, so good questions. So monitoring the system, it can depend, I guess, on how they're doing their operations. When we have, you said fully autonomous, so we're assuming there's probably not anybody on the ground that's responding to certain contingencies or something. So in some cases, they may have software that kind of monitors for, errors or things that happen, kind of like I hesitate to say runtime assurance system, but something, like that. So it'll be difficult if you imagine the scale I was talking about. It'll be difficult for people to be able to monitor everything, looking for errors. So there has to be some kind of assist that kind of points out things to, a person, if there's going to be a person in the loop. So yeah, and then the second part of his question keeps going away from me. Yeah, the automation requiring significant software and cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a big issue as well. I didn't highlight it in these slides, but it is a concern. And as the vehicles become more automated, that just becomes more and more important. That people can't hack into them, that they don't either receive kind of errant commands or receive bad data or anything like that. So there's a lot of consideration being given to that. How it affects airworthiness is a good question, and I don't have a very good answer for you. That is a good question, though. I'll have to do some research on that. Thank you. And I don't see his third question because it says three questions.
I think I only see two. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, all right. We got a quite a list, so we'll move on.
I see.
This is from Charles Wilson. How will the noise of this system compare to what we experience with today's helicopter passing overhead?
So it'll be a lot quieter. Of course, it'll depend on the configuration, but I suspect communities are going to want some kind of noise standard, that they have to, conform to. So I use an example on one of the slides of one company that quotes, about 45 decibels. I don't know, at like 500 feet or wherever they were flying, which he compared to the sound of the refrigerator in your house. So there shouldn't be much noise to speak of, and if there is, you think you get used to it really fast, just like you get used to the sound of your refrigerator in your house. That's the goal. So they actually really measure this thing called an annoyance factor or annoyance level when they look at different kinds of sounds. They do it for the sonic boom, but also with the kind of rotor noise. All right.
Okay, next one from Tom Rocks. Has FAA determined the requirements to enable autonomous operations for certifying UAV operations?
So no, is the kind of the simple answer. And I say that because the way that they are approving some operations now is through waivers, because they're still trying to figure out the best way to write policy or regulations for autonomous vehicles or highly automated vehicles. So they kind of go on a case-by-case basis, and they work with the company and look at their safety case and all of the data that they have and everything, and they'll write a waiver for them to operate in certain conditions. So that's kind of how they're going for now, until they can develop that kind of overall policy that applies to everyone.
So I think Shirley's other inquiry was when this recording will be available. I try to post it as soon as I can. Yeah. All right. And then next one is from Adrian Lee. Hi, Vannessa. Thank you for a great presentation. Drone delivery and package delivery aren't entirely novel concepts, with Amazon drone delivery being very hyped up for a long time. Unfortunately, this has run into problems with airspace, especially in densely populated airspace. What do you think needs to happen regarding not to just airspace, but altitude restrictions and sensing for AAM to happen?
Yeah, so you're right, Adrian. I was actually reading about this. I don't know, not a couple of months ago, maybe, about how long these concepts have been around, and I would remember, like, I thought they were operating in this area. What happened with that? And kind of did some research, and you're right, it stalled in many cases, and for a number of reasons. But the momentum is back behind this again now. So what needs to happen regarding altitude restriction? Yeah, so small UAS, which generally now means under 55 pounds, operates below 400 feet. So lower altitude than most of the other aircraft in the airspace, except for, of course, takeoff and landing periods. So there was a project at NASA that looked at how to manage small UAS traffic. It was called UTM, UAS Traffic Management. And they came up with a concept where the aircraft kind of coordinate with each other. They all need to know where each other are, of course, and there are different services that can be kind of implemented in the system that can help with this coordination, and other types of obstacles or contingencies like weather, wind, and cities is a big concern. So there's that, and then that kind of relates to your sensing question. There still is a good deal of research going into what we call perception sometimes, or sensing. So it's kind of like, how do you replace the pilot's eyes with the sensors? And it's not always vision based. It can be thermal, acoustic, LiDAR sensors, like any number of different things. And there's a lot of research going on into, like, how do we combine some of those sensors to get good data about potential obstacles around us. So it's still a pretty rich research area, and there's not necessarily like standards yet for how it should be done.
Okay, next one is from Aubuchon. So I'm not sure if you touched on this, but have UAM or AAM companies been mostly new to the delivery transportation sector, or have you seen interest in, say, American car manufacturers, for example, Ford, reaching out technology to join the space?
So mostly new, with the exception of, Boeing has invested in one of these companies, so there's kind of a traditional aerospace company. But car manufacturers, I haven't seen that. But I'm not saying I couldn't Google it right now and find something I don't know about, but I have not run across anything like that.
I read about Hyundai being very interested in entering this market.
Oh yes, I was thinking of, yep, he said American car. But yes, you're right. Yeah. I have read that too. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so maybe it's coming.
Perhaps, yeah. Okay, so next one. I think we're a little bit over time. I hope it's okay. 3 more. Okay. So this is from Charlie Wilson. Hydrogen fuels strongly considered?
So not widely on a serious level just yet. Most of the concepts I talked about are electric. I have seen a handful, or just a few, companies that are proposing hydrogen sometimes for the urban operations, and also I've seen it for regional. But it is definitely not the majority, and I think it's kind of emerging right now, as we're starting to focus on zero carbon emissions and stuff like that. It's being considered more heavily now. So
Great. Next one is from Charlie also. He's asking if your PowerPoint charts are available.
oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, they're approved for public, so I can send them.
Okay, great. Okay. Next one is from Tom. Is there a path to get to the overall policy?
Yes, but I am not educated enough to give you a really good answer on how exactly the details of how they're getting there, Tom.
I think he says first to the FAA.
Yeah, I figured he meant the
Right.
FAA. Yeah, I wish I could give you a better answer, but
Okay, last question. So Part 107 UAVs must have autonomous parachute recovery to operate. BVLOS and all the people will much larger package delivery UAV meet Part 21 requirements and also have paraglider chutes for controlled emergency landing, question mark.
so Tom, that's a good question too. I don't know what they're going to require for the larger unmanned or uncrewed systems. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot about that, but it could just be it's not the area I deal in every day. I don't know.
Okay, so that's all the questions. You got quite a bit. But,
yeah. Good.
Yeah, well, so we wrap up here, I guess. And thank you very much, Vannessa, for a very interesting and informative presentation. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending the session. And we'll see you next time. Yeah, and have a good evening.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everybody.